Headstart start of September, and this course on Web3, right, is probably most blown out of proportion in the sense that I'm a newly minted Headstart volunteer, right? My day job is in Web3 for the past 2.5, 3 years, which is lifetimes in this space, right? Headstart is basically India's most trusted startup community, bar none. And it's a very deep and wide network. And because I've known them closely for a long time, one of the things I realized was, right, so Headstart started 15 years ago when there was no real support system in the startup world in India, in Bangalore. So it started off as a bunch of people coming together every weekend, trying to help each other out any way they could, right? And that was 15 years ago. And it would happen every weekend because that's the only time they were free. So it started getting called Startup Saturdays. And that has become an iconic property in India. So, many unicorns out of India had their first pitch on a Startup Saturday hosted by Headstart. That's like a Zomato, a MovieQuick, like really bona fide unicorns out of India, And speaking with Vanya and Gautam, who's the director at Headstart, right? The point that I made recently, a couple of months ago, was, well, that's where Web3 is right now. It's the same exact situation that startups were in 15 years ago, is that people want to build, people are curious, there's no support system. And there's a couple of other elements that make it even harder and even more complicated. And there's also a lot of information overwhelm, right? So because I've been in the space for some time, I figured I'd come in as a volunteer with Headstart and try and add some value on the Web3 track. And that is what we're aiming to do. Let's get started. I'll just share my screen and let's begin. I'll do a little bit of an intro about why Web3, and then why Headstart. One of the keywords this entire month that we're going to be doing this course called The Future Plus Web3 is going to be context. Like, I think one of the barriers to understanding Web3 is that nobody's given any context. And so that's why we're going to give context with these industries. So the first one is music plus Web3, right? But so let's start with the context of why this course at all, right? So why Web3? Why take this pill? And I thought long and hard about how I want to introduce this. I could make a histogram chart thing, say, here are the projections, it's going to be multi-trillion dollars, this, that, and the third, But I found a more fun, more cultural way of introducing the same idea. So I'm sure everybody remembers the movie The Social Network, right? About Facebook. And since it came out, a lot of pop culture has had startup content created, let's say. Movies, shows. In India, we've had TVF pictures and all sorts of stuff, right? But there was this movie called The Social Network. Imagine, so one way of culturally reading where the arc of business might be headed, right, is if I said, hey, 10 years later, another social network movie has to be made. What do you think comes there? What industries, what companies, what comes after the social network and the Web 2 revolution, right? So I have some slides. These are going to be a bit cheeky, but bear with me. So these are scenes from that very movie, right? So this is Sean Parker, very interesting character, the guy who created Napster back in the day. He runs a crypto company right now called Helium. So they have a chain, they have payments, a lot of stuff, pretty big company. But so this guy runs a crypto company now. These two guys, also very recognizable, right? The Winklevoss Twins. These guys have long been Bitcoin maxis, doing giveaways on Twitter, all sorts of stuff. And they also, by the way, currently are working as founders of this exchange called Gemini, which is trying to bring a cryptocurrency debit card into the world. They already have it live, right? And then this guy, his company is now called Meta. So there is that, right? So before everybody starts knocking the metaverse thesis, the Web3 thesis, maybe we should look into this idea that some of the people we recognize as having pioneered things in the previous wave in Silicon Valley have very blatantly shifted their focus to Web3. It's not something worth ignoring. I'm not one of those guys who's going to tell you hop in and start building in it. I'm not going to say buy this token or that token. I'm not about the technical or the speculative. I'm about the cultural. So all I'm saying is it's worth being aware of, That's my only point. Why Headstart? So I'm, like I said, been in the space 2.5 years, marketing projects. Currently, I'm CMO at this company called NFT3. We're basically an identity solution that's funded by the biggest fund in the space called Animoca Brands. It's a well-funded startup, 10.45 million raised in funds, yada, 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 all of that stuff, right? Before that, I was a founder. Before that, I was a novelist. So that's me in a nutshell. I can take this information that I have about Web3, deliver it in a cultural way, in a palatable way where it is relatable to most people. Why do I do this with Headstart? I do it with Headstart because, like I said initially, they're the most trusted name in India in the startup ecosystem, and they're celebrating 15 years. So this is just some stats about them: 50,000 community members, 15,000 ventures impacted. Basically, if you're in the Indian ecosystem, any VC, any founder, if you say the word Headstart, somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. It's just a very loving and kind and honest network of people that I've personally been helped by repeatedly, and they actually played a role in the beginning of me coming into Web3 as well, but that's a different story. Some of the partners they've worked with and are currently working with, Microsoft, AWS, Meta, who we already spoke about, the Indian government, they work with the Finnish government. There's some others that I'm not going to mention. I'm not sure if I can, Bloom Ventures. So just stellar partners for any member of the ecosystem in India. And in my mind, they need to step into Web3 because Web3 needs that kind of trusted community support. And so that's where I saw the synergy of I can step in and connect these two dots, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. Like I said, the keyword is context. Hopefully the context for this course is set. Now we're going to begin with the music plus Web3 part, because that's what we're really all here for, So music plus Web3, trying to take an industry that is fun, that is interesting. And we're not really going to talk about decentralization or Bitcoin. We're going to talk about something much more interesting, just music, how we've experienced it, how the business has grown, the story of the business. In general, in every episode, you're going to notice that the story essentially is that technology changes business models, and how that happens and how they evolve, what new needs get born. That's kind of how you can map what might happen in the future, which is what we're aiming to do with something like Web3, right? So here's a little graphic showing something of the evolutionary track of music, right? So we see gramophones as first. So these are for the precious few, nobody else has it. You don't really have access to music in your life at one point. Yes, it was true, and it was not actually that long ago. Then radio was born, right? And radio is a huge democratic force. It brings audio information into every single household. It's really quite a quantum shift. That's great. Life is coming along. In come cassettes, so audio cassettes, and then the next one are CDs. Well, you start to get collection, you start to get choice. So with radio, you just heard what was playing, right? And then that was not really in your hands. So with cassettes and CDs, you could again involve choice in that, but you still had the option of radio, right? So the democratizing force doesn't generally go away anywhere. It stays, but other additional needs come up. And so, we start trying to fulfill those. So collection and choice come in. CDs are basically just a hardware improvement. Then we see this phase with the MP3, right? So initially, you have 12, 15 songs in a CD, and that's it. And you have to have a device. You have to carry it around. It's bulky, and you have to buy it, and you have to be able to buy each CD as well, right? The MP3 is another democratizer like the radio. And then somebody makes this thing called the iPod, right? Which really changes things, because it takes the MP3 and puts 1,000 songs in your pocket. And that's something that a lot of us might have grown up with taking for granted, but it's really revolutionary, right? So the iPod has a huge, huge role to play with respect to where the music business is now. If you think about going back to the gramophone era, the expectation that you would be able to walk around with music is just absurd, right? So we get the iPod, 1,000 songs in a device, and then we get streaming. So now this one, so like I said, there's hardware plus software plus distribution. These three things change how consumer behavior becomes, how the music business then has to respond, right? So say the cassette, the CD, these are hardware improvements. Then on the streaming side, internet gets so good at one point that we can actually, instead of keeping files on our device, it becomes more efficient to just stream them back and forth. And so now we're in an era of Spotify and YouTube, right? I've lumped them together for a good reason, actually. Spotify would be the proper music business app, right? But We know that YouTube has more viewers slash listeners than even Spotify does. And a lot of that is music content that is being viewed. So that will play part in the thesis will form in the future. But regardless, Spotify, all of music is now in your pocket instead of 1,000 songs. YouTube, all of music videos is in your pocket instead of 1,000 songs. The only issue is we're not owning that music, we're renting it. And we're dependent on a network connection, obviously, right? So now we have Spotify plus YouTube, all of music plus video in your pocket, but you're renting and not owning, and you're dependent on a network connection. This plus, obviously, you still have concerts and you have merchandise. So the current business model for any musician, for any artist, and I'll love to have Abhijit and Richard come in, one of you guys can give us some context. So I haven't properly introduced them. I'll do that at a later point, but I wanted the course context to be set properly first, right? So Abhijit has studied at the Berklee College of Music and is a musician in his own right? Richard has been in the business 25 years. So streaming plus concerts plus merchandise, right? This is kind of the formula right now. And we're looking to, go towards emergent tech. But at this point, if you guys have any holes in my thesis, please bring them up, or any additional context, would love to hear it. Richard, Abhijit, either of you can hop in, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. I totally agree. Your synopsis of all this is very accurate. The way I look at it, if you kind of want to add another dimension to that evolution of the music industry that we were just looking at, if you think about Web 1.0, it's all about read-only, kind of consumption-only, unidirectional flow of data towards the end user. Web 2.0 is all about user-generated content, users being able to create social media, that sort of thing, but they don't own the content. It's the big pillars of the internet that do, Facebook and Apple and Google and so on. Web 3.0, and this is the big shift that we're seeing right now, allows users to own content, to own the data that they create. And for creative, whether you be an artist or a musician, what have you, that's a complete game changer, because in the Web 2.0 world and the older business model that you've been talking about, there are gatekeepers. The big gatekeepers right now for people in the music industry are the streaming services. Spotify, Apple, and Google. They operate as an oligopoly. There's only three. They take about a 30 to 40% cut. And then, unfortunately, most musicians have to operate through two oligopolies. They've also got the record labels to deal with. There's only three record labels in the world. There's Universal, there's Sony, there's Warner. And what that means is that the typical artist only sees 12 to 18% of the revenue of each stream you listen to on Spotify, Google Music, Apple Music. It's a real shame. Now, the reasons for that are pretty complex, but what Web3 allows people to do is to create the music themselves and then sell it themselves because they own it. If you think about the Web 2.0 world, if you create an MP3 and you try to sell it independently, well, someone's going to take it, they're going to copy it. Creative works in the Web 2.0 world are infinitely copyable, and it's hard to build a business around them. That's where the streaming services come in. They do offer value in that they can gatekeep and put a paywall in front of the music. Web 3.0, users can actually go to market and sell the music themselves. They create the creative work on blockchain, and then that proves that they own it, and then provide the record of provenance, and then they can sell it to other people. They can auction it. They can trade it, do what they want. It's a real game changer for creatives.
I love it. It's actually super, super aligned to where we're going to go in the thesis section of our talk here. So I'm going to move forward. So there's two emergent technologies. So basically till now, what I've tried to show you is where the music business is at, where it was, where it has come in. So right now we have streaming, which has a lot of issues, like Richard pointed out, because there's two layers of gatekeeping. And for context, like I've been a novelist 7 years ago, right? I've faced some of the exact same. So the royalties that the creator of the actual artwork gets are quite shameful in the current business model. But it's okay. It's not without reason, and it's changing. So it's cool, right? So let's look at, this is where the music business is at. Where might it be headed? Now, of course, underlying this entire conversation is that these are all hypotheses and experiments, and we don't really necessarily know where they might go, but we can have some guesses, right? So virtual reality is one piece of technology that's emergent, and NFTs is another. Now, I have used the phrase digital distinguishability very, very meaningfully. I don't want to get into an entire debate about NFTs, okay? We can have that in our community later on. You can hit me up. I'm happy to talk. But for this one, right, I want to only be directionally accurate. For example, all I can say quite confidently is that if YouTube has more listeners than Spotify, then it's probably because video is beating just audio alone, right? That's the first thesis. VR plus music. If YouTube is so much better than Spotify in the numbers, then it's probably also safe to say that, well, VR is going to be stronger than video is. So virtual reality music videos should probably be a thing. And concerts, obviously, as well, right? So that's just kind of, I'll just go back for a second. So we'll take the current state of the business, take one emerging technology and create a thesis around it, okay? You have music videos, you have virtual reality coming in, and we've seen YouTube success. So maybe whatever the YouTube of VR becomes, right, is probably going to have a lot of music involved as well. Similarly, we spoke about Spotify, YouTube. You're not owning this music. You have to pay a monthly subscription to be able to stream it back and forth again and again, right? So you're basically renting the music. How I want NFTs to be understood, just very, very rough analogy, okay, is you remember when you bought a CD, you had it, you bought it, it was a physical object that you now owned. You could give it to a friend, you could give it to, any family member, but you couldn't sell it legally. That's the interesting part. So there's two things. It's a digital format of media, right? It's an MP3 file, but it's on a CD, but it's licensed, but it's a physical thing. So I can tell it apart from the other CD of the same album. This is mine, that one's yours. This is not really possible with just MP3 files. That's kind of what Richard was getting into, right? Is once I actually just send you an MP3 file, you can't even tell the difference between the two of them, right? That's what we call fungibility, by the way. But anyway, let's return to this and not go to that direction too much. Imagine if you could buy a CD and also upsell it. So say, imagine, I'll tell a story about this. That's I think going to contextualize it very well. When it was 2009 and Drake initially was coming up, I'm a huge hip hop head and I was an even bigger one at that point. And when his first mixtape came out, it was right on the heels of Kanye West. And you could sonically tell that he was probably the next person. It just made sense. I was very, very, very confident Drake was going to be huge. I listened to that first mixtape, could have bought a CD of it, but would not have been able to sell it again, right? But imagine now if I had the chance to buy a Drake NFT that proved that I believed in him at that moment, then I would be able to help him grow because that's what I did anyway, right? I told 10 of my friends about him. I was like, no, you have to listen to him. You have to listen to him, right? So as the artist grows, the value of that NFT would grow. And 20 years later, 10 years later, now he's the biggest artist in the world. That thing would probably have some value. Kind of like a vinyl disc, So imagine owning a part of the artist that you have become a fan of. It's even better than CDs. You were only owning the end product at that point. Here you're actually becoming a part of the business is essentially what I'm trying to explain, right? So you become not just consumption, but also distribution, because then you're incentivized to help that artist grow. In a very, very rough understanding, you can call it D2C for the music industry. Why is it rough? Because you become part owner, and that's very interesting. So these are two ways that I think we can look at the music business changing in the future of the web, VR plus technology and NFTs plus technology. Let's get into a little bit about, how might this kind of change my experience and the business model. So like I said, for somebody who's a hip hop head, if I could have bought a Drake NFT in 2009, I could have retired right now. That guy really blew up, right?
No doubt.
And and the funny thing about it is that we are so used to the current business model that we don't even realize that cultural tastemakers and people who are early adopters should actually get compensated for pushing the culture in a certain direction, and that can be something as grassroots as just telling your next 10 friends, So one way that this could change, I have some visions that I pointed out here, and I jumped into the Drake story a bit early because it was, I think the right flow of it. So you could create the next Drake and own part of him. That's the point here. The second point, a return to collecting music. So I'm also somebody who remembers my uncles and aunts' CD collections and how much joy it used to give them, to have this wall of music that they had collected over the years of physical memorabilia, and even today, obviously, LPs and CDs that are rare, they sell for a lot. So streaming gives us convenience. Streaming gives us godlike power to access any song anywhere we go, with the asterisk of if you have internet, but which we mostly do, right? But NFTs could also mean a return to collecting music. And that's a layer of culture that's kind of vanished for the past few years from the mainstream, but it actually has a very strong impulse. Like there's a lot of us who like to collect things, right? There's this thing called Sundoku. A lot of people are into that kind of thing. And it does deepen the relationship between the consumer and the artist. That's the NFT bit, right? Imagine what radio had done for just music, right? I remember, again, I'll just tell a personal story, I guess. I'm a kid from New Delhi, India, right? I was a hip hop head, obviously. And I was so in the mood to watch a Jay-Z concert. I've never been to a Jay-Z concert because he wasn't coming to New Delhi, right? So imagine if I take the concert and put it into a virtual reality space, which is essentially what the metaverse is. Let's not go into more details of it, right? It could be the radio for concerts, by which I mean that guy can perform wherever he wants and people can view from wherever they are. So it would quite tangibly unlock geographies of concert goers where revenue is not being made right now, because these artists aren't going there to begin with. So they have streaming numbers there, but they're not big enough, so they don't travel to that place, right? But a VR concert would absolutely become the radio for the concert industry. And one of the things as lay consumers that we don't realize is that an artist actually makes like 70 to 80% of their money from concerts, because streaming doesn't pay much, right? Ritviz is mentioned here because there's another story. We've all been through a hell called Corona, right, for the past few years. And Ritviz is a very, very beloved musician out of India, obviously. I was locked in my house as well when COVID was going on. And Ritviz did, I think, the first metaverse concert in India. It's a huge artist, decides to do a VR, concert and launches a song. And I actually was part of that concert, and I remember how vivid it felt and how connected it felt. And I mean, I think the timing is also strange. We were all locked in our houses for, years, months on end. So it was a little slice of freedom, a little slice of social interaction again at this concert, even though we were at our houses, right? So VR plus music for concerts can certainly be a very strong thesis moving forward, especially in unlocking geographies, I think, because music transcends language barriers anyway. It's just that when it's a physical concert, travel's involved, costs are involved, and those, take away from a lot of the opportunity. So say a place like, I don't know, Angola, or even a smaller city in India, every international artist is now coming there, but they have fans there, right? So a radio of concerts is possible. The fourth point, a world for every song, is actually going to come in very interestingly moving forward, because one of the projects I have brought in to speak with us is following exactly that thesis. But just imagine a music video in virtual reality. So it would be space, you're wearing your Oculus or whatever, and it's like a world, right? It's a whole world, but it's just one song. And imagine what kind of an experience listening to an album in that mode would be. It's much more engaging than video is. For anybody who's experienced virtual reality, even for a minute, they know how undeniable it can be. So the thesis is very, very strong, actually. This is my perfect segue to my first speaker that I have brought in, Mr. Abhijit Nath. Very interesting guy. He's been to Berklee College of Music as well as IMA. That's a very interesting, set of things to have done. He's also worked in finance as well as show business, as well as the social sector. So he has a very, very varied background. But right now, he is, I think, back to his roots, building what he calls the future of music at a.live. And that project is following exactly the thesis we've been talking so far about VR plus music. Abhijit, please come in and share with us your vision and what you guys are making, man.
Sure. Thanks, man. This has been super exciting so far. Heard people talk about what Web3 enables, how it's the change, and how it's. I think the important line to latch onto is it is the next format for music. I think rather than a tech stack necessarily, and that's how we think about it. And you spoke about that, about the fact that it gives ownership back and it does some of those things. Given how NFTs have played out so far, I think we are sort of always at the risk of financializing the asset and like thinking about with Drake, what if I had made 100x,
right.
on that? Sure. So that's exciting for like one type of fan, right? But like, I have this Miles Davis box set that is now worth $12,000 on Discogs, but I'm not interested in selling it because the music on it is more interesting to me than whatever perceived value it has, right? So I think the thinking about how music, NFTs, VR, all of those will change music is interesting and important to think about from the prism of how do people consume music, right? And I think people have sort of, and we hear this in VC pitches all the time, that, people just consume music passively. They'll listen to it while they're in their car or running or whatever. So why will they do this, VR stuff? And I said, you grew up, you're actually old. You remember MTV and people watching a music video for, like 2 hours, you're just like waiting for some song to come or whatever it is, right? And I don't think you were doing that passively. You were actually like paying attention to what is the narrative of the video, what does that lead to? Can I discover new music in that way? I think those are the things that music consumption will change again, right? And if you think about any form of media, forget music, and we're focusing on music, but it's important to look at others. There's a cycle of bundling and unbundling of content. All right, Spotify is a bundle; all the music in the world is free. iTunes is literally the opposite extreme, saying please pay 99 cents for every download, right? And that was immediately previous. So when people again say that passive, all bundled, why will people pay for anything else? It's literally 9 years or 10 years ago, right?
Exactly.
CD is a bundle, cassettes are an unbundle, and so on and so forth. And look at also the fact that media consumption formats change how you consume music itself. So do you know, like, have you noticed like every hip hop song, pop song of the last 10 years, 5 years at least, there is no intro, there is no verse. It's straight to the hook, right? And that's because Spotify pays you at 30 seconds. So you need to ensure that people don't hit skip before 30 seconds, right? So the format changes how people build content.
Beautiful. Right? I love that point.
Yeah, and it's like Netflix, right? Like 10 years ago, if I told you, man, do you want to watch a 10-hour long movie? And you would have said, are you insane? Right? But now you do it. You don't even think about it. It's like you just hit next, right? And you binge watch a whole season in one night. So the music NFT specifically, I think just before that moment, including us, I'm not pointing at everybody else, where we've said this idea of ownership, or we've sold this idea of I was early with sound.xyz or Royal, right? Which are the two things you basically spoke about. But those are still financialization exercises at some level. They're not consumption change. Nobody is letting go of Spotify to listen to Web3 music yet, right? Because it's just not there. Like, why is listening to Web3 music better? I don't know, man. It's not right now, frankly. Right?
I love it.
Yeah, like the actual music is not so. Right. So therefore, what we're building is like some combination of the thoughts I'm expressing here, saying when you change the form of consumption of music, people will consume it differently. So at a.live, what we're building is, as you've written, every word, flipped it, but like every song is a world, right? That's our tagline, and every song is literally a world. Like we actually picture music like that in our heads. But if you bring it to life and create an interactive, immersive world for every song, that's for whoever is between 15, 25, 30, whatever now, that's their MTV. That's where they go to discover new music. That's where they will go socially to hang out at the release party. That's where they'll go and create like user-generated content of types you've never seen before. That's where they'll buy stuff. That's where they'll, when you go to a real gig, you buy a t-shirt. If you go to an Imagine Dragons release party, you buy an Imagine Dragons kit, right? All that stuff. So that's the stuff we're building at a.live, saying we launch a song once a week right now, every Friday. tonight is this one. It's 2:30 EST because the artist is in Georgia, the country, not the state. So which I've had to specify to everyone. It's Georgia, the country, not the state. So that's every week we'll scale that up by the end of the year and have what's called a world builder ready, so artists can come in and do it themselves. They don't need us to.
Amazing.
And then they can monetize that with NFTs that actually change consumption. So, for example, the first artist we worked with, LA-based artist called Essa Balu, she had a song which she's been writing for 5 years, right? The last version of that has been released on Spotify, but inside the world there are 4 more of these versions. And as you go around the world, you actually hear the song evolving in that period, right? That's unlocking stuff. That's something that actual music fans will want to do for whatever their favorite band is. Or like the remix feature is really rudimentary now, but we'll have like this full remix ability. If you pay for it, you can like mash up whatever you want, things like that. We're doing this like reissue campaign for a band called Cynic, heavy metal band from Florida, really cult band, and they've introduced us to like 3 more metal bands after they are bigger than them. But we're doing every album that's ever done.
Amazing.
Back in 1993, right? So that 1993, it's the 30th anniversary next year. So we'll do every one of their albums, and each of them has their own world that's like insane to look at. And what you can do with that, I'll actually show you for a second.
Please do. I was actually going to say that, I have known Abhijit for a while now. And when the first alpha version of the website actually came out, I got on it and spent some time. So for everybody watching, I'm super, super happy that he actually joined, because I would love for everyone to go and just experience it once, everything stays theoretical. And that's why in the end is why these 2 founders are coming in here, because I want it to become very concrete and real. These are people actually building it right now, right? So if you go to the website and experience it once, all conversation will end. You will see what it means to listen to music in a way that you have never heard it before. It's like a music video that's interactive and not just video, right? It's tough to put into words, to be honest, but quite something to experience. And I'm really, really excited about this idea of perhaps something I consider a personal classic from 10 years ago. If that was reissued in this, I would be there first day, be like, yo, this is, so that I think it's amazing, right? That idea is really, really powerful too. Please do share.
Yeah, I'll share the world in a second, but that's actually like for a lot of Web3 projects, it's been hard to sort of break through the labels, because they're like, why would we give this away to you? Like that hasn't been a problem for us.
Because it's a new product actually. There's an actual value add. You're right.
They can reissue again.
Yes.
They can reissue deluxe box sets in this new format. Your sharing is disabled, so I can't. Can you just enable it, please?
Give me 1 moment and I'll do that. Ritik, can I have some help here? I don't think I can do it either, it seems. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, it seems even I don't have that permission right now. Give me 1 moment and I'll get this.
Yeah, no stress. I mean, we can do this later. It's not critical. We can sort of move on to other stuff. But you guys have the idea of it at least, or the sense of it.
I'll be forwarding the link of the website anyway to everyone. And I do think that it's something to do personally. When you have time, it's engaging, and I'm really, really excited to see how it goes moving forward, dude. I mean, I've only seen it on my laptop, right? I can only imagine like 5 years in, when VR stuff is actually like, if I had that device, it would be a whole different experience. Even with the laptop, it's amazing,
We'll have VR running in December. We'll have VR in December this year.
But I also have to buy it now. Either you send
me. Sure.
But I do think that as adoption increases, this kind of product can actually unlock adoption for VR, because I would really not buy it for really anything, but if you like put out a Slim Shady LP on a live house, I would buy a goddamn Oculus for it. Like that would really. So one of the things, one of the larger macro theses across these 4 episodes, right, is technology changing the business model in so revolutionary a way that user behavior actually changes, because I can instantly map what value I will get, right? And I think a.live is one of those projects where that becomes very instantly visible.
Yes, that is correct. So that's exactly it, right? You change consumer behavior based on how people change. I think Sabio asked a question saying, what are the headwinds you're facing from labels? We're actually fine. We're doing 3 Indian movies this year, which, like, right now the next one is a Kannada movie which has 21 million YouTube views, right? So we are scrambling to get servers to not crash when all of those people show up, right?
Good problems,
exactly, right? So the problem is that people get it. People are seeing the value in this, saying this is not just an NFT of ownership or whatever, but it's literally reselling stuff again, and they're looking for something to resell, right? So that changes things for us. I'll just share that screen, right? And literally is like, you'll see what I mean. So this is this band called Cynic that we're working with. This is a space octopus.
Beautiful.
That floats in space. This is the octopus from the top. And
creepy, but beautiful.
Yeah, it's a metal band. And Space Octopus laid this like space egg, and each of those songs sort of like float around it. You click on each of those songs to get into
that world. Amazing
worlds. So like it's actually like it's an imagination changing idea. You know, we're not there yet. Like a lot of stuff is like, we don't have a linear narrative in the worlds yet. That's the next one will have that. Saying it's not just a word, you actually have to pay attention through it, because there's stuff happening in multiple places, stuff comes in and goes, so you again drive people coming back with friends, all of those things, right? So it should, the experience should drive ownership, not the idea of ownership driving consumption.
No, I think it's one of those cases of, you know, one of my favorite books is The Medium is the Massage, right, by Martin McLuhan. I think you're very much like that. So it's I think there's 2 sides of it, right? And the business changes in many ways, but absolutely on the user end especially, right, the experiential side of things, this is one of the more undeniable theses, and that's why I put VR plus music in there. You know, for everybody watching, just go to the link later on. I'll say one line to pitch it. Okay. Imagine a Silver Surfer type space skateboard, and you're wearing your headphones, floating through this amazing, beautiful world that matches the vibe of the music you're listening to. It's really cool, man. So you have to check it out. Abhijit, thanks so much for joining us. I'll quickly start sharing and introduce our second speaker, who is also super interesting, Mr. Richard. How are you, man? This is a friend of mine from the UK.
Doing great.
I think you're based in the UK in London, right?
I sure am. Yeah, I'm based in London.
Yeah, 25 plus years of experience. Worked at MTV, worked at The Guardian, an NFT artist himself that I have actually checked out physically. I remember, you know, and head of innovation at TokenTraxx. Every time we meet, I feel you're launching a new product. Every time I speak to you,
so we have been very busy.
Yeah. You've had some launches, yes, you have, and you have a very powerful community of Web3 enthusiasts as well as music enthusiasts. Would love to hear from you. I think the distribution side of the business, right? Because I do think, like I said, it's not all purely speculative. The idea is
absolutely not.
One of my favorite hip hop stories, again, this is becoming a hip hop station, but anyway, is you remember when 50 Cent initially became big? Apparently, he had been blackballed out of the business in New York, where he was from, and he started doing these things called mixtapes, but differently, where he would hop onto other hit songs beats and rap on them and put that out as bootleg, right? And this is something that changed hip-hop culture in New York, and so obviously the world. But and somebody like me growing up, a lot of people don't even realize where that actually comes from. You know, Lil Wayne became huge off of mixtapes later on. Drake's first thing was also a mixtape, and it had turned into an original piece of content by then, right? But to go all the way back and to realize that it's actually a distribution tactic. What he was doing was, the labels weren't going to sell his music, so he had the drug dealers sell those fake CDs. And so I've always referred to that as a distribution tactic, that really propelled his career and also the direction in which hip hop went. So to me, I see partly there's a lot of things to do with NFTs, but one thing is it reminds me in a shadowy way of somebody giving me a CD to sell, because I can also make money off of it, and it's a CD I like, so why wouldn't I do it, right? It's incentivizing me just the right way. Anyway,
that's an
please introduce. Introduce
sure.
us to TokenTraxx, man. Thanks.
Yeah, so a little about me. My name, of course, is Richard Rauser. I've worked in the technology space for some 25 years, first building desktop apps, and then web apps, and mobile apps, and then more recently blockchain apps. And I guess I was involved in the mobile industry right from the birth of the smartphone era back in the late noughties. And back then there was a lot of innovation happening. Mobile apps were a new thing. iPhone, of course, launched in 2008 in the App Store, and being able to distribute apps that you build yourself to consumers through that medium. And then in the past few years, the innovation level has kind of tapered off a bit. We've kind of plateaued. And I was looking at other places where we might see a frontier emerging of new tech, real innovation happening, grassroots activism, and blockchain was it, and I got involved in blockchain back in 2013, made my first purchase with Bitcoin at a bar in Shoreditch in 2014, which was a novel experience, paid 0.1 Bitcoin for 4 drinks. And then I've been involved as kind of a collector, as an enthusiast, as an evangelist, you might even say, and also as a builder since those days. And then more recent years professionally building. I've got my own NFT art project called Dynastripe, and I'm working on my next one that I'll be coming out with shortly. It's basically generative on-chain art. But I also work as the head of innovation at TokenTraxx, which is a music-based Web3 company, a really exciting company to work for. We're doing lots of cool things. And yeah, one of our first innovations, one of the first things we brought to market is a marketplace for music where you can buy and sell music. But as you say, Shashwat, we're not focused on just allowing musicians to sell music, although that's a big deal because, as we said, 12 to 18% of every stream ends up in the pocket of an artist. That's not much. And also, as you alluded to, this means that artists and creatives, musicians need to focus on selling merch and concert tickets in order to make a living. And that can be difficult for some artists, particularly if maybe you're not able to travel much and to do shows. Maybe you've got a disability and you can't do those sorts of things. So what we do, our marketplace, 90% of the revenue of every NFT sold goes to the musician. So that's kind of a game changer. Now, of course, we don't have the scale of, say, Spotify or an Apple Music, but that will change. We're not the only player out there. And all the marketplaces, there's streaming services on blockchain as well. They're turning much more revenue over to musicians than the existing businesses that Gatekeep do. There's reasons for that. Web3 allows you to deliver a similar level of service with much less bureaucracy, fewer head count, because a lot of the things that are trusted to people in a company like Spotify can be automated and put into a smart contract on blockchain. I think that's incredibly powerful. And then also what's important, and I want to come back to this, is that selling music in NFT format is not just about speculation, as you mentioned, Shashwat. It's about engaging with your fans in a totally different, more meaningful level. And that's possible through blockchain, because when you know who your buyers are, who hold your NFTs, you can offer them things like discounts to a gig that you might be showing, discounts on future NFTs that you might sell. If someone who owns one of your NFTs goes to, say, 6 gigs in a year of yours, if you're a band, then you can send them super fan content, maybe a 2-minute hit reel of all the hottest moments of the events that you've done in the past sort of 12 months, something like that. And then you can build ways on blockchain to allow fans to engage with the artist and also with each other. And that could be, some sort of on-chain game or a communications forum, something like that. There's all sorts of options that are open to you when you do things in a Web3 way that you wouldn't have through traditional means, because the gatekeepers want to control those systems. So yeah, very exciting. We just launched a new project on Wednesday. It's called Graffiti 6 Revolution Track Stems, and it's 3,030 pieces of unique art and music we actually created all the music and artwork programmatically through making randomized combinations of art elements and musical layers. You can see an example of one of the artworks behind me. It's been really exciting to build it, and be happy to fill you in on how we did that, how the project works, how the project came together. It's an exciting thing to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one piece of like context that I think would fit within the music plus Web3 realm. Speaking to an earlier point you made, there's this artist called Ryan Leslie, who had been something of a pioneer as far as marketing himself online was concerned. This guy from the States, initially an R&B singer, turns into a rapper later on, but he got onto YouTube very, very early on. And so what he did was, he was a producer. So he would make these videos of himself producing and put those on YouTube, and they became huge because he was very good, right? I mean, he was literally, playing like 13 instruments in one video or something like that, right? But this is like a decade plus ago. So one of the interesting things that happened some years ago is this guy, works with one label, doesn't work out, works with another label, doesn't work out, eventually goes independent. And now within this current business framework, my understanding very naively is that it's a very difficult thing to do. And this guy is, he's from Harvard, he knows his business, so he's still trying to make it happen. But that had first brought up this notion that now I think becomes very real with Web3 of, imagine subscribing to an artist just like you subscribe to Spotify, because he was trying to do a similar thing with his company / his music career, where he was trying to map who was how big of a fan. And then because you can have token gating with NFTs, you can try and understand the depth of that relationship, and you can offer them extra experiences, So there is a lot of background to this even before NFTs, is the point I'm trying to make. Artists have experimented with this. And the only, I think, point of friction there has been that the current model of the business, just there's too much friction. There's too much work.
You're fighting against it.
There's not enough automation.
No, you're right. And you alluded to the fact that the medium is the message, and this pops up all the time. And Abhijit was just talking about it. If you're creating music for Spotify, you're going to put the hook in that 30 seconds, try to keep the user engaged. If you're writing music for a big record label, well, then it's going to have a certain aesthetic. It's got the record label executives, they need to agree that it's what people want and that sort of thing. And then also, if you think about medium is the message in terms of, media formats, for a long time, an album has been 60 to 70 minutes. There's no reason for it except the fact that that's the amount, the length of time of a CD. Now with NFTs, all that goes out the window. There's no gatekeepers dictating the content that must exist. There's no medium that restricts you to certain parameters. NFTs enable you to create whatever you want. You want to create an album that is 30 hours long? Do it. You want to create an album that's 10 seconds long? Fine. You get to pick. It puts the power of creativity in the hands of the artist. And because they can engage directly with their fans, there's no gatekeepers that are able to say, this is what we want, this is what you should be doing, this is what's, potentially kind of sellable in the current climate. You decide. And then, if it fails or if it succeeds, it's down to you only. It's pretty powerful.
Love it. The writer in me really loves it. This idea that's, by the way, guys, that's always been the case. So for example, the standard length of a book is basically determined by what every publisher on average thinks is the minimum size people will pay money for. Like, they literally go, it's not thick enough to where people will pay $20 for it,
Great
and
example.
Similar thing. So it's like, this has always happened to creatives everywhere. And a lot of these technological innovations finally make possible something that artists have been trying to do for a long time, actually, which is to wrest back some control over, what they create.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about this. So this is a bit of a let's say, transition from our previous conversation, because we've been talking about very much the music industry mainstream per se, right? What you've created right now is very interesting. And it's a new format of art, I can almost say, because it has visual elements as well as audio elements, but it's partly generated by an artist, partly then an AI layer over it,
That's right.
So would love for our viewers to have something of a look into it for sure.
So Shashwat, this is a great example of what's possible when you take artwork to blockchain. Because, if we had to operate through a record label, there's no way they're going to want to publish 3,030 generative, works of art and music, But, TokenTraxx and blockchain bring this kind of project to life. So what we did is there's a band. They're called Graffiti Six. One of the founders of our company, TokenTraxx. He's one half of the band. His name is Tommy D. Him and his band, they created a new song called Revolution. And then we had 4 remixers, hot remixers of the moment, come along and remix it. That's Paul Wolford, that's Odin and Fatso, that's Calix and PB, and who is the 4th? Jess, do you remember? Odin and Fatso, Calix and PB, Paul Wolford.
Too much work.
Flux Pavilion.
Pardon me?
I'll type it in the chat. Flux Pavilion. I'll type these
Flux
names
Pavilion,
in the chat.
that's the 4th. Yeah. So basically, each one of those tracks, the original plus the 4 remixes, they're composed of 9 individual layers. Those layers are called stems, and an example of one might be the drums. Another stem would be the bass. Another stem would be the guitar hook. And what we've done in-house at TokenTraxx is that we've written software that takes those elements from the original and the 4 remixes and then recombines them. They've all been pitch shifted and time stretched to work together. And then the software randomly picks new combinations. There's a total of 2 million possibilities. And then it randomly outputs the 3,030 NFTs that we're now selling. And then we then put it through mastering. We made them all sound really good. And you get different stylistic elements from each of the different remixes kind of mixing with others, and it sounds really good. You might get the bass line from the kind of deep techie house version by Odin and Fatso, and then you might get the drum track from the drum and bass version of Calix and TB, and you know what? They sound great together. It's really cool. And then in addition to the music, we also had a graffiti artist called Jimmy Six. Jimmy Crayon, come from California and do us a bunch of artwork. And basically, there's 3 attributes to the artwork. You can see that's in the background. There's the heart, the main heart, and then you have an accessory that wraps the heart, and then you have an accent at the top that appears above the heart, and then there's about 30 to 40 different combinations, 30 or 40 different choices for each of those elements, yielding 50 to 60,000 possibilities for the artwork. Again, we put it into our software, we randomized it all, and then the output is 3,030 unique artwork, just like the one that you see behind me right now. So the one behind me right now, I gotta say, it's one of my favorites. You know, it looks really, really good. But there is one, and it's called the Triple Laser, and there's only one in the whole collection. I just put it up now. This is the rarest of the heart, and it has all the laser traits: purple heart laser lines around it, and then laser lines on top. There's only one of those, and it hasn't been minted yet. About 400 of the NFTs have been minted already. So there's a chance you might get this. Someone's going to. So.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. Going back to a previous, some of the conversation earlier, I don't think that, so say for example, going back to that Drake story, right? I would not necessarily have bought that to make money off of him. It was just that I was such a huge fan, and I believed this guy was going to be, something huge for all of hip hop, which it ended up being true. Oh wow, your thing changed. But so to me, there's a lot of symbolic value in directly being able to engage with your audience as well. And yes, there's financial incentive to, okay, wow, dude, now you're just changing them too often. That's hilarious, Rich. So I think overall, to close out the conversation, let's just, not even make it very formal. I'm going to start sharing my screen again, and we're going to have a bit of a banter session, if that works for you guys, and if you have the time still. We'll just basically, anybody has any questions, any remarks, comments, let's just go through the chat a little bit and see what people have to say. Okay, I'm seeing one here. K. Gunjan, music is digital stuff which delivers different experience depending on the platform or device that it's being played. Web3 is able to enable ownership and connection between producer and consumer. Do you think delivery business should be separated from Web3 ownership tech stack? She's a Web3 developer. Okay. I don't know, man.
What do we mean by delivery business? Are we talking about distribution?
I think she means format. I think it can mean many things. Like say, for example, like I said, in my mind, all I was saying was partial ownership in anybody else's business incentivizes you to kind of help them grow. So even if the rest of it was the same, let us say, just as a thought experiment, right? Even if the rest of it all stayed the same, but I had some part to play, wherein, maybe I know somebody, maybe I'm in a production. So another thesis that will come in the next episode for Social plus Web3 as well, right? Is that especially now, everybody is kind of like a mini media house. Like I have some followers online, everybody has some friends online and some followers online, and they know each other for certain things. So if I'm known for the music thing, and I'm helping you grow, should I not get a piece of that is the question. And then if I should, then where's the framework for it within the label format that we right now have? So maybe that can also be seen as like content delivery. I think she might just mean format though. Gunjan, if you can elucidate a bit. I think Abhijit would be interesting to hear from on this as well, because his thing is really about changing the format.
Sure. So on the specific, we are doing, it's centralized in the sense that nobody else can build the world right now, right?
Right.
So therefore, we do the delivery. That being said, like every piece of content that's on the platform is decentralized. Like it's stored on Arweave, but it's not available for anybody to download, which happens all the time, right? Like it's the source of the right click save joke in the NFT.
Right.
Right? Like the file is open on IPFS, right? What is stopping me from downloading it for free?
Right.
In this case, there is something stopping you. It's encrypted. You can only decrypt it if you own the NFT, right? And that's like the STEM stuff we have, which is literally every instrument file separately. There is no way any label in the world is allowing that to work, we can talk about the independent artists and what they allow. A lot of them allow CC0, all of that stuff. But if you have to get to some scale, you have to work with the labels at some point. They're the devil, but you have to work with them, right? So they won't allow it. So you have to think of ways to scale businesses rather than projects. For individual 10,000 PFP, whatever it is, right? Generative products like what TokenTraxx talked about, or things like that. That works. It works at the project level. Once you're a scaler, you start running into, how do I actually make this work kind of problem. So decentralization of content, permissionlessness in licensing, those two are the big changes from our perspective. Saying, hey, I want to mash up like 10 songs and I want to publish that as a mashup that I did and I want to sell it. You can't do that. Licensing just doesn't allow it, right? If you make it permissionless and on-chain, you can, right? Those are like real business level things that you enable by allowing them to publish and giving them a place to publish it. So I'm not pretending to have even the right answer, forget all the answers. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're thinking about that, saying, how do you break this apart? How do you break apart the creation, the distribution, the user-generated content piece, the social piece, and now allow them to do what they actually want to do, but figure out how people get paid. Like publishing licenses for us we pay a lawyer in LA, several tens of thousands of dollars to figure this out for us, right?
Yeah.
No, I do think the piece that you said about licensing, mashups and remixes, again, what I'm trying to bring to our audience repeatedly, right, is the prior conversation in the culture that's already happened. So this is, again, and I'm sorry to keep repeating the hip hop stories this episode, but one thing very, very famously in hip hop, right, has been sampling. This is how Kanye West produces. This is how basically Dre produced. Every big hip hop artist, right, basically was sampling content that was created prior and making beautiful music out of it, but it's famously a huge pain, right? And that's a massive pain point. And then the other extreme end of it that I'll take you guys to, right, is on YouTube, especially in India, I think, but I think across the world pretty much, some of the most popular music content is actually mashups, Right. And right now people just find hacks around it. They'll speed it up a little bit. They'll slow it down a little bit. There'll be a dub smash thingy going on, But essentially, there is a kind of creation that lies just next to curation. And value capture for that kind of creative has not really been figured out in this format, even though YouTube and Spotify are there. So you can theoretically create a playlist and theoretically create a music video, So those two pieces are definitely going to be big moving forward for the music business, so to speak, because it's kind of like a slice of the creator economy pie that has not even been, found yet, I think.
Exactly. And we don't know what it'll look like, but at least we're enabling tools, making it as easy as doing a TikTok reel for somebody to mash up 5 songs.
I'm curious on some of the things you mentioned. The fact that you encrypt the files in Arweave, that means they can only be unlocked by certain kind of players and things like that. And I'm just wondering, is that a good thing for musicians or consumers of the content? We kind of went through the encryption war with music, back 10, 15 years ago, with Apple having encryption and iTunes and so on, and eventually they did away with it altogether, right? Are we kind of revisiting those times by encrypting the files?
No, it's fundamentally different. It's not, and the difference is exactly what you said. It's not linked to the platform itself. The file storage is not within Apple's ecosystem, right? Or mine for that matter. The file is living on Arweave. The file is decrypted, is encrypted. If you hold the NFT, Lit protocol will see that NFT and you can play it back anywhere. So I'll take one use case, right? Like we have stems for everything. If you buy the stem package and somebody comes up with this cool running app where when you run faster, the music speeds up with you, you shouldn't have to buy that song again. You already bought it once in a life. That player should just be able to see the token and decrypt. I don't control it. I don't hold the permissions. I don't hold the API keys.
Nice. Wow. As much as I have tried to lighten the conversation around Web3, you get a couple of these techies together. We all help. It's beautiful to see, man. I appreciate you guys kind of connecting, and taking out the time for this. If there's any other questions, please drop them, guys. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up because we've had a nice
a question about take rates. So actually, our take rates are higher. Like somebody said, what stops people from pocketing a higher fee? We can't function at 2.5% for the worlds that we build, right? It's very expensive to build. Like multiplayer is super expensive.
Right. Yeah, I see. Right? I see that question. I think that's a pretty. I'm much more, I guess, of like a abstraction guy or whatever. Where to me, arguing against a macro movement using a micro indicator is generally not a good idea. It's kind of like saying it's not going to rain, meanwhile a tsunami is coming. So it's like, to me, on the macro, there are so many of these little different pieces that have happened. Like YouTube has proved to us that VR plus music is going to be a thing. In my mind, that's just crystal clear. Enough mainstream artists have tried to go independent and, honestly speaking, kind of failed for it to become clear that side of the music has demand, like that side of the business has demand, but the solution stack isn't quite there for it yet. So something very highly specific might be a minor disturbance in the overall momentum of it, but somebody will figure it out. Somebody will figure the maths of it out. Some project will deliver like an insane amount of value where it just blows everything out of the water. There's another question we have: which payment options does TokenTraxx offer? Can I buy the stems with credit card as well?
Yeah, you sure can. You can pay for the stems and the Trax Stems project NFTs in multiple ways. Credit card is one. You can also pay in crypto, Ethereum.
Amazing. Let's see. Let's just give it like a minute or two for any other questions to hop in. If you guys have any, I see the question about NFT platforms not pocketing a higher fee on an NFT purchase. That one's kind of interesting, but I think the easy answer is competition. The thing is, when NFTs are on blockchain, anyone can build a marketplace on top of the blockchain that exposes those NFTs for sale. There's no way to kind of structure an oligopoly around it, like we see with the streaming services. There's only 3; they all charge about the same fee. That practice is kind of banished by blockchain. There's already kind of dozens of marketplaces that sell NFTs on Ethereum, for instance, and they all do charge different fees. It's true, but I think the fees will kind of gravitate towards zero in an environment where it is so easy to build a marketplace on top of blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. And my point is always that the marketplace is for buying stuff, right? Like Amazon is a marketplace, but then I finally need somewhere to consume it, right? I think that's where the real innovation will happen. Like you're familiar with like Ulala or Spinamp or Future Tape, right? Which are like Web3 music players. They obviously don't have a revenue model right now, but they're very cool. Like I love it. right? So that's like level one. That's like, how can I stream Web3 music? That's true.
Right.
But people sort of like 50 things around it, and that's where the innovation will happen. Not where you buy your music, and I don't worry about where I buy my suitcase.
It's cool, man. I think we've covered quite a bit about music plus Web3, which is what was promised. I hope you guys have had some fun. I hope you folks have learned some stuff, enjoyed yourself. Clearly, VR plus music is one thesis, and NFTs plus music is one thesis. There's infinite pockets of opportunity, obviously, when you start going deep into things. One pole of it is Abhijit's thesis on it's the format of consumption. One pole could be how is licensing working, and then that would become the NFTs piece of it. What we intend with these episodes is to prime you to explore more, and so do check out these two projects, and do join for the next episode next week. We'll announce it soon, and thank you so much for being here.
It's been a real pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Shashwat.
Nice meeting you.
Thanks.